guess I'll start off by talking about what exactly Makers Making Change does. It's pretty a wild project, really, and being involved with maker stuff for so long, I have to admit I've been really kind of, I don't know, maybe not so embracing of 3D printing for a very long time, because I see a lot of people not using it in a useful way. It's like making little cup holders and things, and it's like, yeah, that's great, but you can make it out of a better material, you know? So I have been kind of opposed to it, coming to it more from more traditional skills, and I've been working with the Industry Training Authority to do like trades training and very introductory projects that introduce teachers that might not have those skills, like so they can teach their students. And I've been doing that with the Maker Education Initiative, and then over the years I've been sort of doing this type of stuff, and I didn't really realize I had a disability. Like, I just knew that my joints feel really loose all the time, and I feel like I'm either like feeling like a rag doll or I'm feeling like super, super tense. And so it makes it hard to do certain types of jobs, because most jobs, especially when you're starting off, it's kind of the grunt work. It's like the crappy work no one else wants to do, and they're like, you either have to sit all the time or you're standing all the time. And I'm one of those people that I think it's because of the EDS, it's like I can't sit or stand for any significant period of time, or I just feel like everything's locking up or just like giving out. So in the meantime, in being involved with Maker Education, I've been working as a nanny, but it started getting to the point where I was like, okay, well, I can only nanny for people with kids this age that pick up their own stuff off the ground. And you know, it started getting pickier and pickier, and I realized like I kind of have to lie to get a job to a certain degree, and then wait till I get the job. Like you were saying, you have to hide it because I can, and because I can trick people, because I have all these things I have been doing so much, so people don't think it in a million years. But then I realized, like, when I get there, I'm like, I can't vacuum, I don't want to pick up your kids' stuff, I can't carry your kids, like, you know, car seat to school, and all these things that they want you to do. And so I guess just being involved in the education stuff is sort of my side job, sort of transitioned and just lovely presented itself as this amazing opportunity where I don't have to lie and I don't have to hide it. And I just thought, okay, that, and I get to learn how to 3D print stuff that's actually useful. So I'll tell you more about that. So Makers Making Change, we do 3 different things. One is run events. There's 2 different types of events that we've been running so far, and there's sort of a way for us to just meet people in the community that might want to be involved, and then from there there's different ways that you can get involved further. So the first way is we run these make-a-thons, which are 48-hour events where someone that might need a device made of some sort, either they can't afford it or maybe it doesn't even exist yet, would come and say, hey, I need something made, and then we get a team of makers together, like might be an engineer and a software designer and an artist and an industrial designer. And so I know that they've had one event before I started working there, and it was at SFU in Burnaby. And it was quite big. It was like 100 people. And so there's teams of maybe 5 or 6 people, and then the person that wants the device made. And at the event, they would prototype it over 48 hours, and then they would test it with the person, because oftentimes a lot of these assistive devices you'd find online, they haven't actually been tested with people. They're just like, this is what people need. This would be great. And then like no one's actually tried it to be like, this is actually not that great. You need to alter this, this, and this, and it breaks in 2 weeks. So when we run these events, we take people's designs and then we also bring them back to our office, and we have people that come in for all different types of programs, and then we get to actually get feedback on the devices, and then the best ones, we put them online in an open library. So that's kind of the second part we do, is we have an open source library where people can find projects that have been developed by other people and tested. And the great thing about 3D printing is that it's very, very cheap. And pretty strong, depending on the type of material you use. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a really strong material that is also extremely sustainable at this point. There's PLA, but I've been told from the engineers that it's not the most ideal for some of these devices because they have to be pretty tough. But so far, I mean, I feel like if you start off using one material, the technology will eventually get there if there's a need to be researching it. And I know in Vancouver, Emily Carr has a materials lab that they do to do materials innovation and exploration. And they're looking into that sort of thing, like what other types of things can we 3D print with? So we have the events. We also do another type of event where if you want to come over to my booth, I can show you. We have these devices that we just got $1 million from Google to develop. It was basically created by, well, I'll talk about it more in my presentation, but it's sort of like an iteration of a project our organization's already made, and it's a mouth-controlled mouse, and I'll talk about that later. And we run events where we can teach people that have never soldered before how to build one, and then somewhere like a big corporation, they often have these days where like their employees will get paid to do something good for the community, and so they would pay for the cost of them to be made, and then we would find out who in the community needs one of these devices. It's a mouth-controlled mouse, so if you can't use your hands to operate a mouse or your hands get tired often or whatever, this is a great way to do work on the computer, watch Netflix, call your friends, you can use it on a smartphone. And of course, people in the community might not have $200 to help someone else, but if we get these corporate places involved and invested in their communities, we can give them away for free. So. And then, yeah, the third thing is that we have this website that's about to come out, and it will connect people with disabilities with makers who are interested in helping them. So it could be anything from, like, just say you like, I know how to 3D print. There's a library by my house. I could totally print a file for you for a key holder. So you would say, hey, I'm interested to help. These are my skills. You do a little questionnaire, and then it would put you on a map and say, Toronto, this neighborhood. And if someone's like, hey, I need this, they'll match you up only with someone that has something that they need done that is in your skill area. And that is about to be launched really, really soon. And I've seen prototypes of the website, and it's amazing. It's really cool. So now I'll actually go into my real presentation. So Makers Making Change is an initiative of the Neil Squire Society. We don't have an office in Toronto. We have one in Ottawa, but we're hiring someone here in Toronto to run events, but also someone that has to be kind of proficient in, quality controlling devices that might be good at electronics and 3D printing. So if you know anyone that seems like this magical person, let me know, or if you have a way to distribute this job posting, because I really want to find the right person for this role. So yeah, the Neil Squire Society is all over Canada. We've worked with Bell, we've worked with TELUS. We did an event at STEAM Labs like 3 weeks ago, which is how we found out about this awesome event. As I said, we got funding for the lip sync, the mouth-controlled mouse from Google, and some funding to start off from Vancouver Foundation, and a ton of money from the government of Canada. They really like this program because it connects people with each other, but it also gets people able to work and do things day to day that might be difficult, and then they don't have to give funding for different devices, and oftentimes a lot of the devices actually aren't even covered by the government of Canada. You'd have to have them covered by insurance. So okay, so obviously everyone knows who this guy is, right? Unless you're new to Canada, you might not know, but yeah, so Terry Fox, first person to run across Canada, on one leg, no less. And at the time, no one had ever attempted this, and it was a pretty big deal. Nowadays, I don't know if you've ever driven across Canada, there's tons of people doing stuff like this. There's like people on their bikes, people with camera crews, and you're just like, yeah, seen it before. But at the time, like everyone was like, he's crazy. And it totally shifted the perspective of seeing people with disabilities as strong and capable and inspiring, and focused to more the abilities of the person rather than the disability. And this guy, I don't know, maybe for me he's a little bit less famous, but he's still amazing. So this is Rick Hansen. He's from BC as well, same with Terry Fox. And he shifted the perspective of what's possible for people with disabilities as well. As a teenager, he was in a car accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. But it didn't stop him from going to UBC and becoming one of the first phys ed teachers ever to graduate with a disability. He is best known for the Man in Motion tour, where he completed the equivalent of 2 marathons every single day as he toured across the world in 34 countries over 2 years and raised over $26 million. So that kind of comes back to this dude who is not as famous as either of those two, but is who our organization is named after. So this is Neil Squire, and he was a 21-year-old student at the University of Victoria and a basketball star, and he got in a car accident. He hit black ice, and when he woke up, he was in an entirely new world. And he had become a brainstem tetraplegic, and he was unable to move his arms or legs or speak. So this guy here, his name's Bill Cameron, and he's a relative of Neil Squire's, and he was an engineer. And he was totally overcome by this new world that Neil found himself in, and he was dedicated to opening doors for people like Neil, who had significant disabilities. So he decided, he had to invent something for him, because there was nothing at that time that would help someone like Neil communicate. And he knew it must be possible to help him to be able to function day to day a little bit more, capable, more independently. So he put his engineering background to use. So Bill wheeled a teletype machine into the ICU unit at the Shaughnessy Hospital in Vancouver and designed and installed a machine to register sips and puffs through a straw. And these sips and puffs were translated into dots and dashes for Morse code. And that kind of gave Neil his voice back again. So this machine Bill invented became part of the birth to what we call access technology. If you've never heard that term, now you're going to hear it everywhere. You know how that is. When you hear a new thing, you're like, oh, that's what it means. So Neil learned to communicate through Morse code through sips and puffs, and later they were translated on an Apple IIe computer into letters. These letters formed sentences and words and sentences, and thus began the link to technology for people with disabilities. And that's essentially what Neil Squire does, is they link people with disabilities to technologies that help them in everyday life. So this is called the Jouse. It was originally created in the 90s by the Neil Squire Society, and it had to be plugged into the wall. So it's a mouth-controlled mouse, and it was pretty innovative at the time, but it had a big box and had to be plugged in the wall. You couldn't bring around with you on your wheelchair, so you could only really use it at home. So that's someone using it at their house. So technology today, touchscreen devices were not designed for people, like for example, who are quadriplegic. They're not made for people with disabilities or with limited hand or arm function. So if you can't use a touchscreen device, you can't call your family and friends without someone dialing for you and being there and listening to you speak to them. You can't watch Netflix, you can't surf the internet, you can't check your email independently. It's probably pretty annoying. So this is the newer iteration of the Jouse. So this is called the Lip Sync, and I have one over at my booth, and I can show you how it works. It's really neat. So they decided to build on the idea of the Jouse to create the next iteration that also uses sip and puff, the Lip Sync. So the Lip Sync is an open source version of the Jouse, which was prototyped with the help of the Google Impact grant I mentioned. The Lip Sync is a mouth-controlled mouse that has a 3D printed shell, and it uses an Arduino to interface with the touchscreen device. Right now it works on, the version we have right now works on Arduino, Android devices. Why am I saying Arduino? Android devices and PCs, but we're currently in the process of working on one for iOS as well. So it's the same idea as the Jouse, but the sip and puff is used instead of doing Morse code. It's used to right click, left click, scroll, go out of screens, and it's like cheat codes like Mortal Kombat. So you can check it out at my booth. There's like a little card that tells you what all the different sips and puffs mean, and the coolest part about it is if it starts malfunctioning, doesn't work, you can actually restart it using a cheat code with blowing into it for a few seconds. So it's not like you're reliant on someone else coming and fixing it for you. You can just recalibrate it yourself. And the cool thing about this is that this kind of device, for example, would be about $2,000 if you bought it commercially. They're typically made in the States because there's just a bigger market for that type of thing. But as you know, in the States, it's from what I can tell, it's like a market where they're trying to make money. They're not really doing it for social good. But we live in a little bit more of a socialist country, so this type of thing is really supported by the government. They want to see open source here. In the States, it's a little bit more contentious to release something like this. So the coolest thing about this is that it doesn't rely on plugging into a wall. It's USB, and it can be put into a converter to go into a battery of a wheelchair. And the other thing about it is that you can make it for about $200 instead of $2,000. So, which is how we use the events with the corporate sponsors to build them, so we can give them away for free. So this is some of the low-tech projects I was talking about. So these are available on a library online for free. Right now we have a very, splash page kind of intro website, but very soon we'll have our very advanced, cool website up. But we have all of these ones available. So they're the type of devices that could be used for multitude of disabilities, and some people sometimes wouldn't even consider themselves as having a disability. For example, if they have arthritis, certain things might be difficult, but they might not go to a disabilities organization and look for support with that. So a lot of these devices are just very simple 3D printed projects and can be printed for just $1 or $2. And we're in the beginning phase of the project right now, and we're just about to launch it all over Canada. We've been doing some events to just get some partners. We ran one at STEAM Labs, as I mentioned, and our goal is to have over 300 of these open source assistive devices available online. Not all of them necessarily have to be 3D printed. I mean, you could also just use the project files and make them out of wood if you really wanted to, depending on what your interest is. And so the mission of our project is to engage makers to be part of this initiative by helping build these devices and other simple open source assistive devices, so makers can connect with people in their community that might need these devices made, and battle some of the social isolation that sometimes people might feel if they have certain disabilities, where they might not feel like maybe they have anything in common with people, or they might not understand what you do in a hack space, and that would be just a cool way to bring more people in to get involved. And I think that almost anyone could think a hack space or a maker space is a neat place to go, and it's just an awesome way to build more community. So these are a few projects. You can probably guess what they are from looking at them. We have several different types of pen holders, and you were talking about the brush pen and things like that. These, I don't know if these would be something you could try too. I could give you one if you want.
I like the tennis ball thing, man.
Yeah, you can have one. I can give it to you. I'll print another one when I get home. And the cool thing is, if you have access to the files, you can change it for the size of the person's hand. It's really easy to just scale it and change it. And we have all the settings on our website, so you can see how thick is the shell, how much infill should you do. So everything's there, so you don't even have to fiddle around with the settings. I guess the least obvious one is probably the second to right one down there. That one is actually, if you're blind and you need to measure something, you can, you don't have to use it with a pen, but there's a little device, and it's actually broken right now, sorry guys, but it makes a clicking sound. You roll it and it has a little wheel in it, and it measures, so you can choose a wheel that's for 1 inch or 1 centimeter or whatever, and then you can hear how many clicks, and then you know how long that thing is. And so that's the least obvious one, and then the one on the far bottom right is a dyslexia bar. It helps just, it's not like it solves dyslexia, but it helps just focus on one sentence at a time and cut down on the jumbling of letters. So those are some of the beginning ones that we have, but we're aiming to have 300 by the end of next year. And we're just about to launch this project all across Canada, so we're hiring someone in Toronto, in Regina, and in the East Coast. I'm not sure if they'll be based out of New Brunswick or Halifax yet, but these people will be going around hosting events, trying to find people and getting makers to sign up. So if anyone is interested to be a maker or would like to receive a device, or know someone who wants a device or could use a device, please get them to sign up online. this is going to be an awesome project, and we have so much support behind us. It's crazy. I think it's a really neat, innovative project, and I'm interested to see where it goes. And I'm interested to see where the gaps are, and I would be interested to know what you guys think, or if you have any questions, because my talk isn't as long as everybody else's. So if anyone has a question or would like to be involved. Yeah? Pardon? We have them on our website, makersmakingchange.com, but we are working on moving them to Thingiverse and things like that. Some of the projects are already available on like 3D modeling websites, where people download the project files. But does it? We have an Instagram, yeah, but the website is pretty intensive, so I think it'll do most of the stuff for us. But we do post some things on Instagram. Maybe you could give us feedback if what we think we could do better on Instagram, if you want to check it out and let us know. It's just Makers Making Change. The only weird social media we have is that Twitter won't let us put our whole name, so we're Maker Make Change. I don't know. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, folks, I should say.